I'm Jeff Rau. I'm the Gallery Director and University Public Arts Curator here at Biola. Today I am here with Ted Prescott, who is a visiting artist and Professor Emeritus at Messiah College. Also today we're celebrating the dedication of a new piece of public art that was created by Ted and funded by the Long Family Foundation. So we're going to take a few minutes to unpack some of the ideas that are contained in that work.
One of the things when I first saw this site that I was very impressed by and was providential really was that the concept of true vine already existed. I love it when there are multiple circumstances that lead to something. Structurally, the engineering people were really concerned about attaching something with that much load to the wall surface, and so it was important to make it more manageable for supporting. And so I needed to divide the form, but it also really fit as I was working about it. The theological content that I was pursuing, which is that if we participate if we stay in the vine, which is what Christ's injunction to us is, that we are united with him, and we're united really in all aspects of his life, death, and resurrection. And what's important, I think, in my own life and many people's lives is that we love the easy part of the faith, but the cross, participating in the work of the cross is something that's something that we'd like to avoid. So by having the form lead into right below the cross intersection and then appear from the other side, what I wanted to suggest was that we needed to participate in the crucifixion as well as the more enjoyable parts of the experience of being a believer.
It's really interesting, adding to the levels of meaning that are here in the form behind us. I find it really interesting that the vine, physically, the form of the vine also seems to echo a vein structure, and that seems to be so fitting with this analogy of us passing through the cross, where it also then begins to speak to Christ's blood shed on the cross.
Right. Yeah, and a number of people have pointed that out. A friend of mine on the nursing faculty here said that when her students first saw it, that what they thought of was arteries and veins, which I guess would be a little bit, something that you'd expect of nursing people. But the president said it to me this morning also. It reminded him of arteries, and it's great because of its both the life-giving aspects of it and the fact that they're always going somewhere. I initially really thought I'd try to imitate the color of blood, and I'm really thankful that I didn't do that, because I think it probably would have sort of failed on that level.
How is that? Because you think it would be too...
Well, it would both be too literal, and I don't think it would be strong enough visually. This color is so intense visually that it really sort of compels you. I mean, I've had a number of people say to me, oh, you just want to walk over and really look at it because it's so bright and it's so strong. So I think it's one of those places where imitation would not have served really the Christian purposes of the work.
Well, it has such a striking and bold visual presence, that's for sure. Yeah, another interesting part of this project that I wanted to explore with you was how there were so many things that just seemed to come together in a very providential way, that were unexpected or not really part of the original conception, original design or proposal, but ultimately really shaped how the piece came together in the end.
Absolutely.
Initially this proposal was made for the site outside of the art gallery.
Right.
And yet you've already talked a little bit about how the architecture at this location just seemed to fit the piece so well, but could you tell us a little bit more about some of the things that were unexpected results that came together in the actual creation of the work?
Yes, I can. When I was contacted by Dan Callis, and he said 2 sculptures have been chosen and they'd like you to consider another site, and he brought me over to this site to look at it. Initially I was sort of, I don't love this site. And we talked about we talked about several elements, but then the more I considered it, because of the reference on the building related to what I already considered my title concept idea, that seemed like a perfect fit. And because of the form of the building being made like a cross, that also seemed to fit. And that was, to me, that was providential. We explored several other ideas in and around this area here, but nothing seemed to have the fittingness that this did. But there are a number of things that happened along the way. Thinking about the work materially was important. On the one hand, La Mirada is not a place that has the kind of violent weather changes that you always think about when you're doing outdoor work, except for winds. So I was looking at doing it in wood, but I didn't want really to do it in wood. And I have a friend in San Francisco that does a lot of public art, large public art pieces, and so he put me in touch with a couple of bronze casters who helped me cast this in bronze. And
were you concerned about the wood because of the longevity of it, the life of the piece? Or?
Both the life of the piece, but also then I would have had to sort of imitate a vine somehow, and much better to have a growth form that really comes from growing. And so working with apple limb segments that I've harvested, dried, and then I can put together in the configuration I want, was much closer to, yes, I can make that look like a vine than if I set out to sort of illustrate that idea in some way. So I really loved that, and that was another providential thing that I could have it cast into bronze but still look really woody in one sense.
It's really lovely in that way that you can actually see all of the kind of flaws in the wood,
yes,
and some of the branches that have been cut off as the wood was trimmed down. I know that was an important kind of metaphor for you to maintain.
Absolutely, because the Christ's image of being in the vine is we are the branches, and if both in terms of what Christ said and also what we know from all kinds of agricultural work involving orchards and things like that, is the pruning's a constant thing. So I very much wanted to leave those pieces in there to suggest pruning, that's part of our experience of the life of being wed to Christ and being in Christ in some way. Probably to me the most providential thing was the color. Initially, because it's bronze, the typical way that one puts colors onto bronze is to treat it with various acids, chemicals, and heat to do what's called patinaing it. So you actually, bronze is kind of like a copper penny when you look at it if it's clean. But by treating that, you can get all different kinds of colors. Red is the hardest of the colors to get, and there's no real satisfactory way to get a red paint without, a red color in patina without adding paint to it. And when I heard that, and I also knew that we were in a tremendous time crunch to get this done, I thought, why not paint it? It will need less maintenance. It will also need maintenance. It will have maintenance that's more acceptable for people who aren't specialists in art. So, because anybody can wash and wax a car. So that was it. And so Dan Callis and I found a car shop here that was recommended to us, and I went to visit the man and I showed him the pictures of it, and he said, "Sure, I can do that."
Yeah. So painting bronze is quite a task. You can't just go buy some house paint.
No.
Put that up and expect it to last.
No, absolutely.
It has to be a somewhat specialized process just to make sure it's going to stand up in the weather.
A specialized process, and he was an auto body specialist and did old hot rods, restorations, custom cars, and he was really one of the most, as I understand it, and I've investigated a little bit, one of the most widely respected painters in this area. When I entered his shop, he had all of these framed pictures of magazine covers that had his cars on them. And I was a hot rod nut when I was a kid, and so that was kind of really
Coming full circle in your
coming
life.
full circle. Yeah, a past desire meets a present need, sort of. Yeah. So you know, and he had a car sitting out right outside of his spray booth that was painted with this color. And Dan and I looked at that and we said, that is the color we want for it. And you know, I looked at him and I said, Dan, you think that's right? And he said, yeah, that's great. So that's how we got to this color, which.
Well, it was nice how that also came back and pointed back to some of the early references that you had looked at.
It did. I had looked at, when I first looked at this site, the stark white form looks very much like the kind of thing that the early Russian constructivists, and particularly Kazimir Milevich, some of their paintings from the period roughly 1915 to 1925, which had spiritual imagery as part of what they were after, you know, and very reductionist in nature. And particularly Milevich worked with lots of white, intense red, and black, and with cruciform imagery. And so that was something that when I was initially thinking about it, also was really important.
Yeah, and the connection then to that bold red sort of again in a way came full circle to some of your early inspirations for the design of it.
Yes.
And then also, I think, in an interesting way, connecting both to your passions as a child, and also you being on the East Coast but making work here for the West Coast. It brought a little bit of our local Southern California
that I thought was really terrific, and something I hadn't thought about at all. But Southern California is the place for custom cars, you know. So I thought, how neat is that? But you know, that it's here, you know, as opposed to say in Boston or something like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to unpack some of the ideas.
Thank you, Jeff, and you know, I hope it lasts a long time, and that this provides answers for people who are interested.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for taking the time to listen today, and if you wanted to get more information about the arts here at Biola, please visit ccca.biola.edu for lots of information on upcoming events.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.